How was your day? Maybe it asked you to be smaller than you are, to nod at something you didn't believe, to fit yourself into a space that wasn't quite shaped for you. There's a book about exactly that, about a man who crossed the world 4 times, trying to find a place where things made sense. It's called Gulliver's Travels. You don't need to have read it. Tonight is enough. Jonathan Swift wrote it in 1726. In some ways, it's never stopped being read, because the things it points at never quite go away. Tonight, we travel together. You don't have to do anything but listen. Maybe today had a moment where someone in authority said something that made no sense, and everyone else nodded anyway. Tonight's story is entirely about that moment. It has been for 300 years. That feeling of being the only person in the room who noticed. Swift understood it completely. Every week, one book, one night like this one. If you want to know when the next one arrives, there's a subscribe button somewhere on this page. That's all. Lemuel Gulliver is a surgeon, a husband, a father, a practical man who happens to be unable to stay in one place. He has sailed before. He will sail again. Something in him requires the horizon. May 4th, 1699, Gulliver boards the Antelope and sails from Bristol. His wife Mary stands on the dock. He tells her he won't be long. He is always telling her he won't be long. Then the storm. It comes without warning the way storms always do. The sky green before it breaks, the ropes singing, the masts bending. When it passes, the ship is gone. Gulliver is alone in the sea. He washes ashore and collapses in the grass. When he wakes, he cannot move. His arms are pinned. His legs are pinned. His hair is staked to the ground. Something very small and very numerous has been very busy while he slept. Then he hears it. A sound like bees, except it has words. Tiny words. And then he feels something walking on his chest. He raises his head an inch, and there, 6 inches tall, stands a man with a bow. And this is the part most people don't realize. The Lilliputians aren't gentle. They are organized. They are armed. They have been watching since he washed up. They have a plan. They have always had a plan. Gulliver negotiates. Lying on his back, speaking in a language he doesn't know yet, gesturing with fingers the size of men. The Emperor appears. 5 inches of absolute authority, and they regard each other across the distance of scale. They transport him to the capital. 500 carpenters build a special vehicle overnight. He rides through Mildendo on a flat bed cart pulled by 1,500 of the Emperor's horses. The city turns out. He is, for a moment, the most extraordinary thing that has ever happened to anyone. He learns the rules. And the rules are extraordinary. Government positions are awarded to those who can dance on a tightrope. The higher the position, the more dangerous the rope. The current treasurer is particularly gifted. His name is Flimnap. There's more of this story, much more, but not tonight. Tonight, just this chapter. Gulliver, tied to the ground, watching a government dance on a rope. Rest with that image for a moment. If tonight helped, even a little, subscribe. Next week, another book. Another night like this one. He learns more. The Great War between Lilliput and its neighbor Blefuscu began over a question of theology. Specifically, which end of an egg one ought to crack open first. The big Endians broke with Lilliput over this. 11,000 people have died so far. Then comes the night the palace catches fire. Gulliver, practical as always, finds the quickest method to hand. The fire is extinguished. The palace is saved. The Empress, whose chamber was at the center of it, is not entirely grateful for the method. Flimnap has never liked Gulliver. He has done the arithmetic. The man-mountain eats as much as 1,700 Lilliputians, and presented his case to the emperor. There are whispers now. There are meetings in rooms Gulliver cannot fit into. The articles of impeachment arrive at last, 6 counts. Making water in a manner offensive to the Empress's apartment, treasonous communication with the enemy of Blefuscu, refusing to reduce that enemy to a province, and so on. The sentence proposed his eyes, both of them. He chooses not to wait for the sentence. He wades into the channel between Lilliput and Blefuscu, crosses it in 40 minutes, and keeps walking until the water is too deep for walking. And then he swims. He does not look back. He almost does. He doesn't. An English ship finds him. Weeks later, he is home. Mary opens the door. The children run down the stairs. The world is exactly the same size it always was. He stands in his own kitchen, and it feels like someone else's house. He stays 2 months. Then the sea begins to call. Or maybe it's just that he cannot stop comparing everything he sees to the size it used to be. On June 20th, 1702, he boards the Adventure. Mary watches from the dock. She has learned not to say what she's thinking. Brobdingnag. They don't know that's what it's called yet. What they know is the grass is taller than trees. The landing party runs. One man doesn't run fast enough. And then the shore is empty. And Gulliver is standing alone in a meadow where the flowers are the size of parasols. The farmer finds him. A hand, the size of a room, with fingernails like floorboards, closes around him. Gulliver goes very still. This is the opposite of Lilliput. He is now the small one. Here's where it gets interesting. Because size, it turns out, changes everything. Not just how big things are, but what you're allowed to feel. In Lilliput, Gulliver was powerful. In Brobdingnag, he has to earn every scrap of dignity with both hands. The farmer's 9-year-old daughter, 40 feet tall, decides he is hers. She names him Grildrig. She makes him a tiny bed in a doll's box. She teaches him Brobdingnagen with the patient care of a child who has decided something is worth the effort. Her father sees an opportunity. He takes Gulliver on the road, charging admission, town after town, twice a day, sometimes 3 times. Gulliver performs, bowing, walking, demonstrating his sword, and tries not to think too hard about what he has become. Word reaches the capital. The queen sends for him. She buys him for 1,000 gold pieces, and he passes from the farmer's hand to the royal court. Glumdalclitch comes too. She is appointed his keeper. He has never been more relieved by anything in his life. The king receives him. He is a philosopher by temperament. Methodical, serious, genuinely curious. He asks Gulliver about England. Gulliver begins with quiet pride to explain. The king asks his questions carefully, one at a time, with a scholar's patience. How does your parliament function? How are your judges appointed? How do you fund your wars? Gulliver answers each one, proud of what he knows. And so Gulliver describes war. The cannon, the musket, the way a properly placed explosive can bring down a wall or a city. He explains this with the straightforward clarity of a man describing a useful tool. The king goes very quiet. Then the king speaks. He has listened for many weeks. He has asked every question a careful mind could think of, and his conclusion, delivered without cruelty, without mockery, in the tone of a philosopher completing a proof, is that the English are the most pernicious race of little odious vermin that nature ever suffered to crawl upon the surface of the earth. Gulliver's response is instructive. He decides the king is simply ignorant. The king has never left Brobdingnag. He doesn't know the grandeur of European civilization. His judgment, Gulliver tells us, should not be taken as final. Swift finds this very funny. Life in the palace settles into a routine. Glumdalclitch dresses him, carries him in her pocket, sets him on tables when company wants to see him. A monkey, the size of a draft horse, takes an interest in him one morning. This does not go well. The monkey carries him to a rooftop, 3 stories up in giant terms, equivalent to several hundred feet. It treats him like a kitten, attempting to feed him chewed food. Glumdalclitch can be heard screaming below. Gulliver is too dignified to scream. He is, however, extremely frightened. He is rescued. When the court asks how he managed on the roof, Gulliver says he fought the monkey off with his sword. He describes the blows he landed, the creature's retreat, his own coolness under pressure. The court listens politely. Nobody believes a word. There is also the matter of the dwarf. One of the Queen's entertainers, 12 feet tall, tiny for Brobdingnag, has decided that Gulliver is a rival. He drops him into the cream. He stuffs him into a marrow bone. He flicks beetles at him during dinner. The dwarf's motivation is dignity, which is, it turns out, scale independent. The end of Brobdingnag comes from the sky. An eagle mistakes Gulliver's traveling box for something edible. It carries the box out over the sea, then it drops it. The box falls for a very long time, then the ocean. An English ship finds the box floating. They haul him up. He is back among people his own size for the first time in 2 years, and finds, to his considerable discomfort, that he keeps ducking under doorways that are already tall enough and speaking too loudly for indoor rooms. Home again. His daughter runs to him. He flinches. His wife reaches for his hand. He pulls it back, startled by the scale. He stoops in his own hall, where the ceiling is 8 feet high. It takes weeks before his hands stop shaking when someone small approaches. The 3rd voyage. Pirates, Dutch mostly, attack the ship. They debate among themselves whether to kill him. A Japanese pirate argues for mercy. The Dutch insists otherwise. In the end, they set him adrift on a plank with 4 days of food. He has, by this point, some experience of surviving impossible situations. He finds small islands. He is climbing a hill to get a better view when a shadow falls across him. Not a cloud shadow, a circular shadow with edges. He looks up, and there, blocking a section of sky, is a large island, a floating one. On Laputa, everyone is distracted, deeply structurally, constitutionally distracted. Their eyes point in different directions, one turned inward, one turned upward. They require servants called flappers who carry bladders on sticks and tap their masters' mouths and ears to redirect their attention to the conversation. The Laputans are obsessed with mathematics and music, and nothing else. Their clothes are calculated by geometry and therefore fit badly. Their food is cut into geometric shapes. Their conversations, when focused by flappers, are exclusively about abstract theory. They have not looked at the ground in years. The island can descend. When a town on the mainland beneath it refuses to pay taxes or supply soldiers, Laputa simply lowers itself over that town, blocking the sun and rain. If they still refuse, the island descends further. It is a very quiet way to end an argument. He descends to the mainland, to Balnabarbi, the kingdom beneath Laputa's shadow. The countryside is a ruin. Broken walls, failed crops, houses half-built and abandoned. The people are thin and their eyes have the look of people who have been promised that everything will be different soon. Then Lord Munodi's estate appears, sudden, lush, orderly, working fields, a well-built house, fruit trees bearing actual fruit. Munodi is a former minister fallen from favor. His offense, he declined to implement the new methods. He He still farms the old way. Everything grows. The Grand Academy of Legato awaits. It is a large building. Every room is a project. In the first room, a man has been working for 8 years on a method to extract sunbeams from cucumbers, so they can be bottled and released in cold summers. He is nearly there. He says this every year. In another room, a man is building a house from the roof down, because he has reasoned that this is more efficient. The roof is perfect. The walls beneath it are theoretical. The building has been under construction for 11 years. The projector is undeterred. He sails from Legato, past the ruined shores, to an island called Glubdubdrib, ruled by a governor who has a particular gift. His servants are summoned ghosts. The palace is always a little cold. The conversation is, at least, historically significant. Alexander the Great is summoned. Gulliver asks about his conquests, the strategy, the genius, the destiny of it. Alexander answers quietly, most of it was accident. Some of it was luck. The famous crossing of the Granicus was a mistake that happened to work. He seems almost relieved to say so. Caesar and Brutus appear together. In death, Swift suggests they find something like mutual understanding, or at least mutual honesty. What was glory? Caesar shrugs. What was justice? Brutus looks at his hands. The ghosts are more honest than the histories. Homer is summoned. He is nothing like his portraits. Small, unimpressive, with a face that made no particular promises. He laughs when he hears what he's been imagined to look like. He prefers, he says, not to be aware of the commentaries written about him. Gulliver finds this somehow the most disturbing revelation of all. He calls for the ancestors of English noble families, and the ghosts that appear bear no resemblance to the names. The great houses descend from barbers and footmen and criminals. The fine bloodlines are interrupted by scandal and substitution in every generation. The history of aristocracy, the ghosts quietly confirm, is largely fiction. Lugnag, a kingdom on the way to Japan. Gulliver arrives and hears something remarkable, that among the people of Lugnag, some children are born with a red spot on their forehead. These children will never die. He asks to see them. He is very excited. Before he meets them, he tells his hosts what he would do with immortal life. He would spend the 1st century learning, the 2nd century accumulating wealth, the 3rd century building friendships with the greatest minds of each generation. He describes it with the careful pleasure of a man planning a long and perfect journey. Then they show him a Struldbrug. At 80, the law considers them dead. Their property passes to their heirs, and they receive a small pension. At 90, they have forgotten the language of their birth. At 110, they can no longer read a notice board. They age, but they do not stop aging, ever. They envy the dying. They petition for death, and are refused. They hate the young, they hate each other. 2 Struldbrugs who were friends at 30 cannot communicate at 200. They no longer share a language, let alone a memory. Swift is making an argument about time that has nothing to do with fantasy. He sails to Japan. The Emperor of Japan is courteous and accommodating. He arranges passage home through Dutch merchants. The Dutch are considerably less courteous. Gulliver arrives back in England in April 1710, having been gone 4 years, 6 months, and 13 days. He knows the exact count. He is home 5 months when he signs the papers for his next command. Captain Lemuel Gulliver, master of the adventure. Mary, standing in the doorway, watches him go through the paperwork with his particular focused calm. She has stopped asking why. She knows why. The crew mutinies in the South Seas. They have had enough of his discipline. or perhaps just enough of him. They lock him in his cabin for months. Then they bring him up on deck, row him to an unknown shore, and leave him there with nothing but his coat. The boat disappears. The horizon is empty. He walks inland. In a clearing, he finds creatures, humanoid, roughly his height, covered in coarse hair. They run on all fours as often as 2 legs. They fight with their nails and teeth. They smell extraordinary. Their faces, he realizes with a cold settling feeling, are not entirely unfamiliar. And then the horses arrive, walking upright, moving with deliberate grace. Their eyes are the eyes of something that is thinking carefully about what it sees. They look at the Yahoos. They look at Gulliver. They look at each other. One of them makes a sound that is unmistakably a word. The Master Houyhnhnm leads him gently away from the Yahoos, not by force, just by walking, and by Gulliver finding that he very much wants to follow. At the household, the horse examines him, touches his hands, studies his face, considers the coat. He is the horse, concludes an unusual Yahoo. The lessons begin. Every morning, patient, methodical, careful, the Houyhnhnm speaks. Gulliver repeats. The Houyhnhnm corrects. There is no impatience in it. Reason has no need of impatience. Within 3 months, Gulliver can hold a conversation. Within a year, he can say almost anything he needs to say. He explains himself, who he is, where he comes from, what humans are. The Master Houyhnhnm listens with perfect attention. He asks only one question during the entire account. Do these creatures, these humans, have a word for saying something that is not true? He explains lying. He explains why. The Houyhnhnm is quiet for a long time. Then he asks a follow-up question. If you say what is not true in order to make someone believe what is not true, what do you call that? Gulliver says, we call it politics. The horse is quiet again. War. Gulliver explains war. He describes a battle, the formations, the cannon, the aftermath of a field. He is thorough and accurate. He is, as always, proud of his thoroughness. The Master Houyhnhnm's ears move slightly backward. It is, among horses, the gesture of deep distress. The Houyhnhnm describes their own society in return, or rather, explains the absence of all the things Gulliver has been describing. No courts because no crime. No hospitals because their diet and reason keep them healthy. No government because reason makes government unnecessary. No word for lying because the concept is inconceivable. And then one morning Gulliver looks at the Yahoos below the household. Really looks and sees it. The hoarding of the shiny stones, the fighting over food that neither side needs, the cruelty without purpose. He looks at his own hands. He looks back at the Yahoos. The distance between him and them is getting shorter. The years pass, 3 of them. Gulliver builds a small house from wood and clay. He tends a garden. He speaks daily with the Master Houyhnhnm. He does not miss England. He does not miss London. He does not miss, and this surprises him very much at all, the assembly of Houyhnhnms convenes. The question of Yahoos has been formally raised. Several representatives argue that Yahoos should be castrated and their numbers allowed to gradually reduce. The debate is conducted with perfect rationality and no malice whatsoever. That is, in some ways, the most disturbing thing about it. The master must tell Gulliver. The community has decided a Yahoo, even this unusual Yahoo, cannot remain in a Houyhnhnm household indefinitely. The reasoning is sound. The master offers it as gently as reason allows. It is as gentle as reason allows. It is not very gentle. He begins building his canoe. It takes weeks. He works alone at the shore. He stretches the hide. He shapes the frame. He does not want to finish it. He finishes it. If you drift off somewhere in here, that's the whole point. The canoe will be waiting when you come back. The morning he leaves, the master Houyhnhnm walks to the shore. He does not say goodbye. Houyhnhnms have no ceremony for it. He simply stands at the water's edge, and as Gulliver pushes the canoe out, lifts one hoof, and touches it gently to Gulliver's head. It is the highest honor the society offers. Gulliver weeps the entire way across the bay. 5 days on the water, he finds a small island, rests, moves on. Then, on the 6th day, a sail. A Portuguese ship. Its captain comes to the rail as they approach his canoe. The captain's name is Don Pedro de Mendez. He calls down in a friendly voice. Don Pedro offers food. Gulliver cannot eat at his table. The smell of Yahoo proximity is overwhelming. Don Pedro offers clothes. Gulliver flinches from the contact. Don Pedro offers his own cabin. Gulliver agrees, then spends the first night pressed against the far wall, as far from the door as possible. Don Pedro asks questions, gently over several days. Where has Gulliver been? What happened to him? He listens to the account without skepticism and without mockery. He is, Gulliver notes in his journal, the most patient listener he has encountered since the master Houyhnhnm. He does not write down the comparison. He feels it anyway. On the voyage home, Gulliver makes a discovery: there are horses in the cargo. Draft animals bound for Lisbon. He finds reasons to visit them, frequently. He can be found there at all hours, speaking to them in a murmur, his forehead against their necks. Don Pedro observes this and says nothing. Lisbon. The city is warm and loud and full of people. Gulliver moves through the streets with his coat collar up and his eyes down. Everywhere he looks, he sees Yahoos going about their Yahoo business. Buying, arguing, laughing too loudly, wanting things. He walks very fast and does not stop. Don Pedro insists Gulliver stay at his house before sailing on to England. There is a dinner. Gulliver sits at the far end of the table. Other guests arrive. He places his chair another foot from the nearest person. By the end of the evening, he is effectively in a different room. England. His own street. The familiar brick, the familiar door. Mary opens it before he knocks. She must have been watching the window. She steps forward to embrace him. He faints. When he wakes, he is on the parlor floor and Mary is kneeling beside him, very calm. As if she has decided that whatever this is, she will simply be beside it. Swift is making his argument here, quietly in the background. The most rational man in England. The man who has lived among purely reasonable beings. Who cannot touch his wife. Who faints at the smell of his own children. Whose only peace is in a stable. Swift wants us to notice what the pursuit of pure reason has cost. The stable at the back of the house becomes his sanctuary. 2 horses. Patient, warm, asking nothing of him except hay. He spends hours there each day, talking to them in Houyhnhnm. They do not understand, but they stand very still while he talks, which is, at this point, enough. Now, let's go back, because Swift built these 4 voyages in a very particular order, and it helps to see the whole structure. Lilliput first, the party of the high heels and the party of the low heels, sworn enemies, distinguished by shoe height. Sound familiar? Swift wrote this in 1726. The shoes are still very much a subject. The rope dancing ceremony in full. Candidates for government positions perform acrobatics on a tightrope strung 18 inches above the floor. They leap and tumble. The emperor watches. The position goes to the best dancer. This is, the text makes clear, how Lilliput has always selected its ministers. Gulliver watches and thinks how quaint. The war with Blefuscu, the neighboring island nation, has lasted years and consumed thousands. Its origins an imperial decree, issued 3 generations ago, that all eggs must be cracked at the small end. The big Indians who refused went into exile. They went to Blefuscu. Blefuscu sheltered them. The rest, as they say, is history. The emperor commands Gulliver to capture the Blefuscan fleet. Gulliver wades into the channel. The water reaches his waist, and simply takes it. 50 warships, each the size of a bathtub, towed on cables back to Lilliput. The emperor receives them with tremendous ceremony. Gulliver's back aches from bending. Then the emperor announces the next step: total conquest. Blefuscu to be made a province, its people enslaved. Every big Indian executed. Gulliver declines. He will not be used, he says, to reduce a free people to slavery. The emperor receives this refusal with the expression of a man hearing a language he does not recognize. The emperor's gratitude has a very short half-life. Within weeks, the private meetings begin again. Flimnap is very busy. Old favors are called in. The cost of Gulliver's provisions is circulated again, updated. The accusation of treasonous sympathy with Blefuscu is added to the file. The file is getting thick. Flimnap presents the financial case. Over the course of Gulliver's residence, the Man Mountain has consumed provisions equivalent to the annual budget of 1,728 Lilliputians. He has produced nothing taxable. His presence is, financially, a catastrophe. The emperor nods. This is the language he understands best. The articles of impeachment are drawn up by committee. 6 men, 3 days, 6 charges. The language is formal and judicial and precise. It is also, when you read it carefully, a document about the crime of being inconveniently large and inconveniently honest. Swift is pointing, again, at something that did not stop in 1726. Charge 1, making water near the imperial palace. Charge 2, refusing to subjugate Blefuscu as commanded. Charge 3, treasonous negotiations with Blefuscan ambassadors. Charge 4, proposing to visit Blefuscu, a hostile nation. Charge 5, Gulliver stops reading. He has understood the document. He writes no letter. He makes no speech. He simply walks, quietly at night, into the sea. 40 minutes across the channel to Blefuscu. A friendly vessel. A floating chest. Eventually an English ship. He does not look back this time either. He has become very good at not looking back now to the Houyhnhnms. Because their society deserves a closer look. They have poetry. It celebrates the virtues of friendship and goodwill, the pleasures of running. Their astronomical knowledge is practical and accurate. They have mathematics, but only enough to solve real problems. Nothing abstract. Nothing for its own sake. No poverty among the Houyhnhnms. No surplus either. Each household has what it needs and tends not to accumulate beyond that point. Because the concept of wanting more than you need requires the concept of wanting to deprive someone else. And that concept is simply not available to them. Their approach to death. When a Houyhnhnm knows it is dying, they know. They can feel the system declining. They settle their affairs with the same calm attention they would give any practical matter. They say their goodbyes as if leaving for a visit. There is no grief. Reason has made its peace with what must be. Below the Houyhnhnm settlement, the Yahoos occupy their separate space. Gulliver watches them from the hill. Today, a dispute over a pile of shiny stones. 3 Yahoos have gathered them, 2 others want them. The fight is vicious and purposeless. The stones have no use. The pile is rebuilt immediately after the victor reclaims it. Then comes the morning. Gulliver swims in the river, and a young female Yahoo throws herself at him. He is horrified. He scrambles out of the water. She is restrained and sent away. and Gulliver sits on the bank for a long time afterward, not quite able to stop thinking about what that recognition means. Swift's argument is crystallizing now. Pride, the belief in one's own superiority, is the Yahoo's most destructive quality, and the humans Gulliver has described to the Houyhnhnm are proudest of exactly the things they should be most ashamed of: their wars, their laws, their politics, their theology, the buildings they build to house their pride. The assembly is called. Gulliver knows this because the Master Houyhnhnm tells him, gently, that the community has a question to discuss. He does not say what the question is. He does not need to. Gulliver already knows. In the way that you know when a conversation is about you, even when you are not in the room. Inside the assembly, the arguments for Yahoo removal are made with full rational force. Yahoos carry disease. Yahoos are destructive. Yahoos reproduce faster than can be managed. Their presence in a rational society is fundamentally incompatible with that society's values. The argument is airtight. That is the problem with reason. It can arrive at conclusions that feel wrong and cannot be disproved. The counter-arguments are made. Tradition, utility, uncertainty. They are weaker. Reason tends not to lose debates to tradition. The assembly deliberates. The vote is taken. The result is what the result was always going to be, once the question was framed this way. The Master Houyhnhnm returns home at dusk. He sits with Gulliver in the household. He explains the assembly's finding. He does it carefully, and with something in his manner that is as close to sorrow as reason allows. Which is not very close, but closer than you would expect. Gulliver listens. He does not argue. He knows the reasoning is sound. He just wishes it weren't. The canoe, he had begun it already, quietly, knowing this was coming. Now he works every day. Yahoo hides stretched over a wooden frame. Yahoo hair for caulking. A sail cut from the largest Yahoo skin. He works with a surgeon's precision and does not let himself think about what the materials are. The day before he leaves, the Master Houyhnhnm comes to the shore. They do not speak. They have said what there is to say. The horse stands at the water's edge, and Gulliver stands beside the canoe, and they watch the tide for a while. It is, by any reasonable measure, a farewell. Neither of them calls it that. Don Pedro de Mendez. We should stay with him a moment, because Swift puts him in the book for a reason, and that reason is quiet and important. Don Pedro is good. Not philosophically good, not rationally good, just, simply, daily, unremarkably good. He helps Gulliver because Gulliver needs help. That is the whole of it. Swift's hidden question, buried in Don Pedro, if this man, warm, decent, generous, imperfect, is also a Yahoo by Houyhnhnm definition. What does that tell us about the definition? Gulliver cannot see it. He is too clean now, too certain. But Swift leaves Don Pedro in the book. The door stays open. Gulliver cannot take Don Pedro's answer. He has found his ideal, the Houyhnhnms, and against that ideal, everything human looks like failure. This is perhaps Swift's darkest joke, that Gulliver has found the truth, and it has made him worse, not better, just more certain of the wrong things. Back home, Mary has been expecting him. She always expects him eventually. She has kept the house. She has raised the children through another long absence. She has, as always, maintained the life he keeps leaving. Her grief at his estrangement is quiet. She does not perform it. She just lives inside it. The children, 2 of them now older. They approach him carefully, in the way that children approach things they are uncertain of. He tries. He genuinely tries. But every time they reach for him, something flinches. Their faces are too Yahoo. Their hands are too Yahoo. He loves them. He says he loves them. The stable is 15 steps from the back door. His daily life has its rhythms. Morning in the stable. Afternoon, if he can manage it, with his writing. Evening, he sometimes takes a meal with the family. At the far end of the table, with lavender stuffed in his nostrils against the Yahoo odor. Mary has stopped commenting on the lavender. She has decided this is just how things are now, he writes. Every morning, after the stable, he is making a record. Not for himself, he says, but for humanity. He hopes that humanity will read the travels and reform. He knows it probably won't. He writes anyway. In the way that people write when writing is the only form of action left available. Here's where it matters most. Behind Gulliver always is Swift, the author looking through his creation. Gulliver tells us everything, and understands almost none of it. He thinks he is writing a warning. He is also writing a self-portrait of a man too certain to see himself clearly. Swift is counting on us to notice the difference. The irony of Gulliver as narrator is Swift's greatest technical achievement. He gives us a man who is honest, accurate, and completely misses the point of his own story. We see what he cannot. And then, if Swift has done his job, we see ourselves. You don't have to follow every word tonight. The argument will still be there tomorrow. Let's look at what Lilliput actually is. Swift is writing in 1720, when England's political world is a very specific kind of circus. Robert Walpole, the most powerful politician in England, has just survived a major scandal. His opponents are furious. His allies are performing extraordinary loyalty. The tightrope is very much in use. Flimnap is Walpole. The connection would have been invisible to no one reading the book in 1726. The jealousy, the financial obsession, the rope, dancing political survival. Swift has drawn his target with complete precision, given him a different name, and published him to all of Europe. Walpole could not sue. The Lilliputians were fictional. The Tory-Whig split as Big Endians and Little Endians. The religious schism as egg-cracking theology. The War of the Spanish Succession as the Lilliput, Blefuscu conflict. Swift compresses 10 years of English political trauma into a dispute about which end of a breakfast egg to open. The reduction is savage. It is also, 300 years later, still accurate. Brobdingnag revisited. What is the king actually? He is what Swift thought a ruler should be. A philosopher who reads widely, thinks carefully, asks good questions, and is genuinely appalled by what honest government looks like in practice. He exists to show England what England does not have. He exists to be everything Walpole isn't. The king's refusal of gunpowder is the moment Swift most admires. A ruler who is offered the most powerful weapon imaginable and says no, not because he can't use it, because he won't. Power that restrains itself. Swift thought this was the whole point of civilization. England, he felt, had rather lost the thread. The third voyage, Laputa Balnabarbi, the Academy, targets a very specific enemy, the Royal Society, founded in 1660, dedicated to experimental philosophy and the advancement of natural knowledge. Swift found it ridiculous. Not the idea of science, but the gap between the grandeur of the theory and the poverty of the result. The fourth voyage is different in kind from the first three. Lilliput is comedy, Brobdingnag is satire, Laputa is farce. The homonyms are something colder. They are Swift's thought experiment pushed to its end. What if reason worked? What would it produce? And what would it do with us? Swift's central question, can humanity ever be rational, has no clean answer in the book. The homonyms achieve reason by not being human. The Yahoos are human without reason. Gulliver sits between them. the only figure who has touched both worlds and cannot make a home in either. That is the joke. That is also the tragedy. The answer Swift refuses to give us directly is the silence after the last page. He gives us Gulliver in his stable. He gives us Mary at the door. He gives us Don Pedro's unrewarded goodness, and he leaves us to decide which of these is the book's actual answer. That question is still open. Tonight, you don't have to close it. 4 voyages, 1 direction. Each one strips away another layer of the story. Gulliver tells himself about humanity, until there is nothing left to protect him from what he actually thinks. Swift designed this deliberately, the way an architect designs a building to collapse in a specific direction. Lilliput says we are petty and vain. We fight wars over egg theology. We select governments by rope dancing. We impeach the people who save us when they become inconvenient. This is the gentlest of the 4 diagnoses. Swift is still laughing here, mostly. The next one is harder. Brobdingnag says, we are physically disgusting when seen clearly. Gulliver watches court ladies at close range. Their pores, their skin, the mechanical reality of enormous bodies going about their business. He is appalled. Swift's point: this is what we all look like. We simply don't have the scale differential to force the view. Laputa and Legato say we are foolish in our grandest intellectual pretensions. We build institutions to house our theories. The theories fail. We build larger institutions. We are very proud of the institutions. The countryside starves while the academy debates the extraction of sunbeams from cucumbers. The comedy here has a sharper edge. The Houyhnhnms say we may be beyond redemption. Not certainly, not with malice, just rationally following the evidence, probably. This is the coldest room in the book. Swift walks you in slowly, closes the door, and lets your eyes adjust to the dark. He does not open the door again. You have to find it yourself. The deepening is the structure. Voyage 1, you laugh. Voyage 2, you wince. Voyage 3, you recognize something uncomfortable. Voyage 4, you sit with it. Swift does not offer a 5th voyage in which everything is resolved. He offers only the stable, the horses, the lavender, and Mary at the door. Gulliver's ark is also ours. We travel with him through Lilliput, amused. We travel with him through Brobdingnag, humbled. We travel with him through Laputa, increasingly uneasy. By the time we reach the Houyhnhnms, we are ahead of him. We can see what he cannot, and then we realize that gap is the point. The moment we see what Gulliver cannot, his own pride. He has learned to despise Yahoo pride. He has identified it as the central vice of the species. And then he returns to England consumed by his own superiority over every Yahoo around him, which is, itself, pride. Swift has built a trap that works on the reader who is paying attention. We laugh at Gulliver. Then we realize we are Gulliver. That is Swift's double trap. The one you only notice when the second jaw closes. We have spent the whole book feeling superior to Gulliver's blindness, which is exactly the kind of pride Swift has been describing. The book catches the reader catching the narrator, then catches the reader. Back to Lilliput in closer detail, because the political satire rewards close reading. The nation is divided between the ancient party and the modern party. The ancient party favors high heels on shoes. The modern party favors low heels. The emperor currently wears one heel higher than the other, and so walks with a slight limp. Political neutrality has a physical cost. The nail-cutting ceremony. Every 17 months, Gulliver's fingernails must be cut. This requires a state occasion, officials appointed, instruments prepared, the procedure conducted with full imperial protocol. Gulliver submits with patience. The ceremony takes most of a morning. The nails are preserved as relics. His language lessons in Lilliput, learning a language designed for people a twelfth of his size. Vocabulary mostly manageable, grammar workable. The challenge volume. Every conversation requires him to lie on the ground and speak at the level of a whisper. Shouting would be a hurricane. He learns to modulate. Gulliver becomes, in Lilliput, a very quiet man. The palace fire in full detail. It begins in the Empress's apartments. A candle, a curtain, the quick work of flame in a miniature building. The fire brigade arrives, tiny pumps, tiny buckets. They are making progress. Then Gulliver arrives. He considers the situation. He has, at that moment, consumed a quantity of the local wine. He acts. The Empress's response is not gratitude. The method was not, she explains, appropriate to the dignity of the imperial apartments. The incident is recorded. It will be referenced in the articles of impeachment. The palace is undamaged. The political damage is permanent. Swift finds both of these things simultaneously true and funny. Gulliver's loyalty to Lilliput is genuine. That is what makes the betrayal so complete. He wades into enemy water for them. He hauls warships for them. He submits to nail ceremonies and whisper, conversations, and the indignity of being displayed and discussed. He gives them everything they ask for. Right up to the one thing he won't, the limit. He will not help destroy a free people. He says this simply. The emperor hears it simply. And between that statement and that hearing, something changes in Lilliput that cannot be unchanged. Every government has a point beyond which it cannot be served. Gulliver has found his. The emperor has found it too, though from the other side. What power always wants is total compliance. Not loyalty, not service, not even agreement. Total compliance. Gulliver gave them everything short of that. Everything short of that is, to power, the same as nothing. The emperor is not cruel, he is simply being a government. This is, Swift argues, what governments are. The articles of impeachment in full. Because they are worth reading slowly. Each charge is technically true. Making water near the palace, accurate. Refusing to subjugate Blefuscan, accurate. Communicating with Blefuscan ambassadors, accurate. Every fact in the document is real. The document is still a lie. Swift is describing how official truth works. Gulliver considers his options. He could appeal. He could argue. He could, if he were willing, simply refuse to be blinded. A project that would require rather more Lilliputians than currently exist. He considers all of this. Then he packs one coat, walks to the shore, and wades in. The decision is made in about 30 seconds. He wades to Blefuscu, the enemy nation, the one he refused to destroy. They receive him. They have heard what Lilliput has done. There is no pleasure in it for them either. They help him repair a full-sized boat, found washed ashore from some other wreck, and set him on his way. The big Indians and little Indians agree, for once, that he should probably go home. Lilliput from the water growing small. He watches it diminish as he rows. The palace he saved. The plain where they staked him. The city he could hold in one hand. It was, for a time, the entire world, complete with its politics and its ceremonies and its egg theology. Now it is a line on the horizon. Then it is nothing. The English ship finds him. The adventurer, by coincidence, bound for the same waters he left from. The captain recognizes a man who has been through something. He asks few questions. He gives Gulliver a bunk, a meal, and the silence of a decent man. Gulliver, in the bunk, takes out the Lilliputian sheep from his coat pocket. He keeps them there all the way home. Back in England, he shows the miniature livestock. Crowds come to see them. He charges admission. he makes a good profit. The English public, he finds, will pay generously to see something impossible if you put it on a table and let them stand close. He thinks about Lilliput, about the farmer who displayed him twice a day. He thinks about this for a while. Mary's response to his return is characteristic. She asks if he is well. She asks about the voyage. She looks at the sheep with the expression of a woman who has learned not to be surprised by what her husband brings home from the sea. She asks if he would like something to eat. He would. They eat dinner. This is love, Swift suggests, the ordinary kind. 2 months. He is restless in 60 days. He tries to explain this to himself. He has a duty to see the world, to improve his knowledge, to serve the advancement of learning. These explanations are not wrong. They are also not entirely honest. The sea is calling. It always calls. He goes. The Adventure sails on June 20th, 1702. Atlantic weather, Cape of Good Hope, the Indian Ocean. These are the bones of an 18th century voyage. The ports, the provisions, the navigational fixes. Gulliver records them with a sailor's precision. Then a strange coast. The landing party goes ashore to take on water. The landing party steps ashore. The grass is wrong. Taller than it should be. Much taller. One man measures it against a fence post, 20 feet. The fence post is 60. The landing party exchanges looks. Then, from the direction of the hill, something moves. Something very large. They run. The farmer's hand. It descends over Gulliver like a slow roof. Enormous, deliberate, warm. Gulliver does not struggle. He has the presence of mind to understand that struggling would accomplish nothing except injury. He goes still. He breathes. He waits. The hand closes gently. He is lifted. For the second time in his travels, the world has changed size around him. The sideshow begins within days. Word spreads the farmer has found something. A creature like a human, but small. It speaks, sounds like speech anyway. It eats, it moves. It seems astonishingly to have opinions. Come and see. 2 pennies at the door. Gulliver stands on a table in a market hall and performs humanity for paying audiences, twice daily. Glumdalclitch teaches him through all of it. Through every humiliating sideshow, every town they pass through, every audience that pokes and prods and laughs. She teaches him vocabulary in the evenings, corrects his pronunciation with patient care, makes sure he eats before each performance. She is 9 years old and 40 feet tall, and she is the best thing in Brobdingnag. The Queen's scholars debate his nature. Is he a species or an accident? A dwarf or a new order of being? They measure him. They write papers. They invite colleagues to come and measure him again. The papers are contradictory. The scholars enjoy the contradiction. Gulliver sits on his special table and answers their questions with the patience of a man used to being a question. The king's conversations with Gulliver are the heart of the Brobdingnag section. 6 extended sessions. The king asking, Gulliver answering. The king probing the answer until its foundations show. The king is the best interrogator in the book. He is not hostile. He is simply thorough. Thoroughness, it turns out, is the most devastating quality a judge can have. Parliament. Gulliver describes Parliament with pride. The ancient institution, the elected representatives, the deliberation of laws. The king listens, then asks how are members chosen. By election, says Gulliver. The king asks who votes. Gulliver explains the property qualifications. The king asks further questions. Gulliver begins to hear his own answers differently. The law. Gulliver describes the legal system, the courts, the judges, the tradition of common law. The king asks how long do cases take. Years, says Gulliver, sometimes decades. The king asks who pays the lawyers. Both sides, says Gulliver. The king considers this, he says. So the people who lose the most from delay are also the ones paying for it. He writes this down carefully. The gunpowder offer. Gulliver has been thinking about how to be useful, how to give back something of value after months of royal hospitality. He tells the king that he knows the composition of a substance that, properly deployed, could destroy a city in moments. He offers to share the recipe. He presents this as a gift. The king's refusal. He says he is struck with horror. He says any man who could discover such a thing and offer it to strangers is either a coward or a monster, both for different reasons. He says he would rather lose half his kingdom than know this secret. He thanks Gulliver for the offer. He declines it. He moves on to another topic, with visible effort. The contrast is complete. England presents itself as the most civilized nation in the world. Its laws, its parliament, its navy, its royal society, its literature, its commerce. Brobdingnag looks at all of this and says, "The most civilized thing we have seen you do is offer to help us kill people more efficiently." The king prefers not to be civilized in this particular way. The monkey, it comes through a window. Gulliver is alone in his box house when it finds him. A palace animal the size of a draft horse, with the particular curiosity of a creature that has found something novel. It picks him up. It takes him to the roof. It grooms him. It attempts to feed him. He is furious and terrified in exactly equal measure. Glumdalclitch's frantic search below. She has opened the box and found it empty, and now runs through the palace calling Grildrig in a voice that carries the full force of enormous lungs and genuine distress. Servants chase the monkey across 2 roofs. It drops Gulliver when it gets bored. He is caught by a footman. He is physically fine. His account to the court. He says he fought bravely. He says he landed several blows. He describes the monkey's retreat under his assault. He is specific about the injuries he inflicted. The court listens with great attention and complete disbelief. The queen offers to have the monkey punished. She does this entirely without visible amusement. She is very kind. The end comes from outside. The eagle takes the box during a seaside walk. Glumdalclitch had turned away for one moment, and the bird had taken the moment. It carries the box 300 feet up and drops it into the sea. The box floats. Gulliver is inside, bouncing in the dark, waiting to find out what happens next. An English ship. The captain and crew lower a boat. They break open the box. Inside, they find a well-dressed man of ordinary size, who immediately begins speaking in a very loud voice and flinching at low doorways. He is brought aboard. He is given food. He falls asleep at the dinner table. He has been in Brobdingnag for 2 years and 9 months. The readjustment. He stoops through doorways that are 8 feet high. He tries to pick up his shipmates' belongings with fingers calibrated for objects the size of furniture. He whispers, shouting would, he still feels, be too much. The sailors watch him carefully. They are not sure what they have rescued. They are fairly sure he is harmless. Home. His own house. Standing in the doorway, he looks down the hall and sees, for the first time clearly, that everything in it is a doll's house. The furniture is miniature. The ceilings are oppressively low. His wife, coming toward him, seems to him to be at a completely impractical scale. He reaches for the wall to steady himself. She takes his arm. He flinches, not from her, but from the reflex. She takes his arm again, firmly he lets her. She leads him to the parlor chair. She sits him down. She brings tea. This is what stays constant in the book. Mary's steady, practical love. Offered without ceremony, maintained without acknowledgement, the most reliable thing in Gulliver's unreliable world. Third voyage. And this time the pirates catch them early. The Dutch captain argues for leaving Gulliver alive. The Japanese captain argues for mercy. The compromise a plank, 4 days of food, the open sea. Gulliver has been in worse situations. He paddles. He finds land, he looks up. Something is blocking the sun. Laputa from below is a wonder. Circular, about 4.5 miles in diameter. Its underside is a smooth adamantine surface, veined with mineral and catching light in extraordinary ways. The island casts a shadow over everything beneath it. It is permanently between you and the sun. This is both literally and metaphorically accurate. He signals them, using a combination of gestures and urgency. They lower a chain. He is hauled up, slowly, through the shadow into the light, the island rising past him as he rises. The mineral surface close enough to touch, the underside of a floating country, extraordinary and indifferent, Golden Age illustration style, soft watercolor. The Laputan households are his introduction to the island's social reality. The wives are desperate. Their husbands lost in theory, unreachable, unable to engage with daily life. The wives want to go to the mainland. They take lovers with such openness that it has ceased to be a secret. Their husbands would know, if they ever looked down from their calculations. The flappers in operation, because they are worth dwelling on. When a Laputan wishes to speak, his flapper taps his mouth. When he wishes to listen, his flapper taps his ear. In group conversation, flappers are constantly in motion. A dinner party of 6 Laputans requires 6 flappers working continuously. The conversation is still mostly mathematics. The flappers have opinions about this that they keep to themselves. Music is continuous on Laputa. Every function of the island, from the celestial mechanics that keep it aloft to the daily schedule, is expressed in musical terms. The Laputans hear music in everything. They hear it in the motion of the planets, in the patterns of trade winds, in the sound of footsteps on the adamantine floor. The music never stops. After a few days, Gulliver finds this less enchanting than he initially did. The island as political weapon. Below Laputa, the kingdom of Balnibarbi has rebellious towns. The king's response lower the island over them. First, the shadow. The crops fail. The town darkens. If still rebellious, lower further. The island descends onto rooftops. If still defiant, the full weight of the floating country descends. One town resisted all 3 stages. There is a reason it is no longer mentioned. There is a limit, however, and Swift puts it there deliberately. A mountain in the rebellious region of Lindolino is too tall for the island to crush. The magnetic ore in the mountain interferes with Laputa's flight mechanism. The island cannot descend past a certain point. Power has physics. The mountain does not negotiate. It simply exists. Gulliver descends to Balnibarbi and walks a countryside that theory has ruined. The experimental agriculture has exhausted the soil. The new building methods have produced buildings that fall. The reformed education has produced a generation that cannot read the old books. Lord Munodi's estate appears like a memory of what things were before someone decided they needed improving. Lord Munodi's house in detail, because Swift loves him, solid walls, old beams. A mill on the stream that has been milling grain for 60 years. Fruit trees that know how to fruit. A staff that has worked there long enough to understand what they are doing. Munodi apologizes for it. He says, "I am considered obstinate and old-fashioned." His fields stretch green to the horizon. He says this is embarrassing. He says this with the quiet pride of a man who has grown excellent wheat. The Grand Academy of Legato deserves its own tour, room by room, project by project. This is Swift at his most surgical. Every room is a real target. Every projector is a real type. The comedy is exact and the cruelty is precise, because Swift is not making things up. He is describing things he has actually seen being funded. Room 1, the man building from the roof down. His reasoning is impeccable. Roofs are the most important structural element, so they should be established first. The walls will follow from the roof's requirements. The building has been under construction for 11 years. The roof is magnificent. Below it, nothing. He is currently applying for additional funding. Room 250 years pursuing the extraction of sunbeams from cucumbers. The process involves compressed cucumbers, specialized glass, careful thermal management. The result, after half a century, is a faint vegetable smell and considerable optimism. The projector explains that he is close. He says this with the serenity of a man for whom closeness is a permanent condition. Room 3, blind painters, trained exclusively by touch, the texture of pigment, the resistance of canvas. They identify colors by smell. They argue among themselves about whether a painting is blue or green based on competing olfactory judgments. Their paintings are remarkable objects. They are not, in the conventional sense, paintings. The political projectors, a separate wing of the Academy, and Swift's most direct target. One has devised a method for detecting treasonous thoughts by analyzing the pattern of excrement from suspected subjects. Another proposes curing political faction by swapping half the brain of each party leader with the other. A third advocates taxing women on their beauty. All three have submitted formal proposals. Behind Legato, and Swift is very precise about this, is the South Sea Bubble, 1720, a financial scheme of staggering theoretical elegance that produced a crash of corresponding scale. Thousands ruined. Swift lost money. His friends lost more. The Academy, in his mind, is the South Sea Company with laboratories instead of ledgers. Same confidence. Same result. Glubbdubdrib is a relief. A different kind of satire, colder and cleaner. The dead tell the truth. Not because they have become wise, but because the usual incentives for lying have expired. They have nothing to gain from flattery. They have nothing to fear from honesty. Death, Swift suggests, is the most reliable credential a witness can have. Hannibal is summoned. Gulliver asks about the vinegar, the famous account of dissolving alpine rocks with vinegar to cross the mountains. Hannibal considers the question. He says there was no vinegar. There were ropes and initiative, and the particular stubbornness of Carthaginian engineers. The Alps were just stone. He crossed them because he decided to. The vinegar is a later addition. He seems faintly amused. The Roman Senate summoned alongside a modern parliament, placed in the same room. The Roman senators grave, deliberate, the bearing of men who understood that the republic was fragile and required their full attention. The modern parliament, Swift does not describe what happens. He says only that the contrast was very striking. He trusts us to complete the image. The Struldbrugs, and Gulliver's plan. Before he sees them, he is asked, "What would you do with immortal life?" He leans forward. He has thought about this. 1st century reading. 2nd century accumulating carefully considered wealth. 3rd century, befriending each generation's greatest minds, carrying their wisdom forward. 4th century, the living archive of human civilization. He says this with complete conviction. He means every word, his beautiful plan in full. He would watch civilizations rise. He would be there at every great discovery, not to claim it, just to witness. He would remember things that everyone else would forget. He would be the one who could say, "I was there." He describes this vision for several minutes. The Lugnagian nobles nod. One of them coughs very slightly. The truth. At 80, the Struldbrug is legally dead, property gone, pension minimal, the ordinary life over. Memory begins to fail. Connections dissolve. By 90, the language of their birth has drifted past them. New words they cannot learn, old words they can no longer find. By 110, they cannot read a posted notice. They age. They do not stop aging, they only stop dying. They petition for death. Every 10 years a formal petition. Every 10 years denied. The law does not permit it. Immortality is the condition of their birth, not a choice, and cannot be reversed by petition. They have submitted an average of 7 petitions each. The petitions are archived. The Struldbrugs continue. The law at 80, they are legally dead. Their estates pass to their heirs. Their marriages are dissolved. For the prevention of great mischiefs to peace and property. The statute says, they receive a small state allowance, sufficient for food. They become wards. They wander. They are kept alive by a system that has decided their lives, despite all evidence, must continue. 2 Struldbrugs appear before Gulliver in person. He has been told to prepare himself. He has prepared himself. It is not sufficient preparation. They are. He reaches for language. They are what time does when it cannot stop. He wants to look away. He does not look away. That is a kind of courage. They hate each other. The 2 Struldbrugs. They have known each other for over 100 years. Whatever they once were to each other has been worn away by time, until only irritation remains. They cannot communicate well. Their language has diverged across the decades. They occupy the same bench in the same hall and regard each other with the compressed animosity of centuries. Immortality, it turns out, does not make you love better. It makes you tired. Swift's argument is complete. Death is not the enemy. Purposeless continuation is. A life without terminus is a life without meaning, because meaning requires the pressure of time, the knowledge that this matters because it will not last. The Struldbrugs have everything except the thing that makes everything matter. He gives us this thought at the exact midpoint of the book, then moves on. He sails from Lugnag, Japan, the Emperor Cordis, the protocol requiring him to trample a crucifix, which he does with the private apology of a man who hopes the gesture will be understood in context. The Dutch arranged for the return passage. He is home again in April 1710. He has been gone since 1706. He notes in his account that the crossing was unremarkable. He has, by now, a high bar for remarkable. The 4th voyage departure. He has purchased his own ship now, captain, not passenger. He has a crew of his choosing. He is gone within 5 months of returning. Mary watches. She has stopped appearing at the dock. This is not coldness. It is the adaptation of a woman who has learned not to make goodbyes into things that require coming back from. The mutiny. His crew has been recruited over months by men who resent him, or fear him, or simply want his ship. They move at night. They lock him below. For months he is their prisoner on his own vessel. Then they bring him up, row him to a shore he cannot name, and leave him with the clothes on his back and the skills in his hands. The boat disappears. He stands on an unknown shore for the 4th time. He is getting better at this. The Yahoos, he smells them before he sees them. Then he sees them. In a clearing, tangled together, fighting over nothing in particular. They notice him. Several approach. They are, he reports with clinical precision, the most disagreeable animals he has ever encountered. They are also, he does not yet report, entirely recognizable. The gray horse appears. He moves between Gulliver and the Yahoos with quiet authority, no violence, just presence. The Yahoos retreat. The horse examines Gulliver with the attentive calm of someone who has found something that requires thinking about. He makes a sound, then another. Gulliver realizes the sounds are addressed to him. He attempts to respond. The horse listens. The conversation, the first rational conversation Gulliver has found in years, begins. The master's household. Clean lines, simple materials. Everything in its right place, because in a household organized by reason everything has an obvious right place. Gulliver is given a space, not a cell, not a cage, but a corner of a storage area, clean and dry. He is given food. He is observed. The household observes him with the focused curiosity of a community that has no category for what he is. The language lessons, going deep into them, because they are Swift's most hopeful pages. Every morning, the master speaks a word. Gulliver repeats. The master corrects with infinite patience. There is no frustration in the classroom. Frustration requires the belief that the other person should already know something they don't. The Houyhnhnm cannot conceive of this belief. The lessons proceed at the pace of genuine learning. The full account. When his language is sufficient, Gulliver gives the master the complete history of humanity, or at least of England, which Gulliver takes as representative, government, religion, war, commerce, law, medicine, science. He tells it as a proud account of civilizational achievement. The master listens to all of it, then asks his first question. The Houyhnhnm's first question. He has no framework for the word opinion. In the household, things are known or they are not known. The concept that one might hold a position on something without either knowing it or not knowing it. That there might be a middle state called belief or preference or view is genuinely inaccessible to him. Gulliver explains it 4 different ways. The Houyhnhnm listens to all 4. He remains uncertain. The Houyhnhnm asks Gulliver to explain money, why it exists, what it does. Gulliver explains, it allows trade between people who have different things. The Houyhnhnm understands this, barter. Gulliver explains, but money can accumulate. One person can have much more of it than they need. The Houyhnhnm asks, why would they want that? Gulliver pauses. He explains. The Houyhnhnm listens. He asks again, but why? Gulliver's growing self-consciousness begins here. The slow, cold dawning of a recognition he has been avoiding. Every time he describes human behavior to the Houyhnhnm and watches the horse's response, he sees his species from the outside. The view is not comfortable. He tells himself he is describing other humans. He begins, very quietly, to hear himself in the description, the Yahoo catalog. The master has been observing the Yahoos for years. He describes their behaviors to Gulliver. The hoarding of shiny stones, the addiction to a fermented root, the inexplicable wars over territory neither side uses, the cruelty toward members of their own group who appear different. He describes each behavior with clinical precision. Gulliver listens, nodding, identifying each as a known human behavior with a different name. The parallels made exact. Yahoo hoarding of stones, human accumulation of wealth. Yahoo tribal violence, human warfare. Yahoo addiction to the root, human alcoholism. Yahoo cruelty to the different, human persecution. Yahoo leadership competition, human politics. The master lists them without malice. Gulliver transcribes without comment. Swift lets the transcription do the work. The female Yahoo throws herself at him in the river. He is swimming, alone, early morning, in a pool he has used for months. She is young by Yahoo standards. She finds him different. She acts on this finding without hesitation or reflection, in the way that Yahoos act on everything. He scrambles out of the water. He stands on the bank. He looks at his hands for a long time. The assembly. It convenes under the terms that any question affecting the community may be brought before the full body. The question of Yahoos has been building. The population growing, the behaviors escalating, the rational case accumulating over years of observation. The master attends. Gulliver waits at home. He tries to read. He cannot read. The master argues for Gulliver's exile, gently and with full acknowledgement of his qualities. He is, the master explains to the assembly, not like other Yahoos. He has reason in a limited form. He has goodwill. He is capable of language. But he is still a Yahoo, and a Yahoo in a Houyhnhnm household creates a precedent. The precedent is the problem. Gulliver cannot argue against reason. He has spent 3 years learning that reason is the highest faculty. He cannot now deploy feeling against it. Not because feeling is wrong, but because the Houyhnhnm language does not have the words, and because, in this society, feeling is not a valid form of argument. He agrees to leave. He agrees to leave the only place he has ever felt fully at home. He has 2 months to prepare. He uses every day. He is not sad, he tells himself. Sadness is a Yahoo response. He is practical. He plans. He built. He organizes his few possessions with the methodical care of a man who needs to keep his hands busy so he doesn't have to feel what his hands are doing. If you're drifting off, go gently. The canoe will wait. The canoe construction. He is precise about the materials because Swift needs us to register them. Yahoo hide, Yahoo sinew, Yahoo hair. He works with a surgeon's thoroughness. The canoe is technically excellent. He paddles it in the shallows before the departure day. It holds. It is the best thing he has ever built. He does not think about what it is made of. He does not allow himself to think about what it is made of. The farewell morning, he brings his few things to the shore. The master comes. Other Houyhnhms from the household come. They stand at a respectful distance. The master presses his hoof to Gulliver's head, the highest honor. Gulliver kisses the hoof. This is, in Houyhnhnm society, an extraordinary gesture. From both sides, the community watches in silence. Nobody comments. He paddles away. He does not look back for the first mile. Then he looks back. The shore is still visible. The master is still there. He looks for another half-mile. The shore is a line. The master is a shape. He looks once more. The shape is gone. He turns and faces forward and does not look back again. He paddles for 5 days. The Portuguese ship appears on the 5th day. He sees it and considers paddling away. He does not have enough provisions to reach land without resupply. He paddles toward it. The captain comes to the rail, broad-faced, warm-voiced, the particular voice of a man who is glad to find someone alive. The captain's name is Don Pedro de Mendez. He calls out in the universal language of someone trying to be helpful. Gulliver's revulsion at Don Pedro's humanity. This is the climax. Not a battle, not a confrontation, not a dramatic scene. Just a man on a ship who cannot be near another man without flinching. Don Pedro reaches out a hand to help him aboard. Gulliver looks at the hand. He looks at Don Pedro's face. He sees a Yahoo who is being kind. He cannot reconcile these two facts. He takes the hand. Don Pedro's goodness on the voyage home. He gives Gulliver his own cabin. He asks the crew not to approach Gulliver without warning. He has food brought and left outside the cabin door. He answers Gulliver's questions about where they are heading. He does not ask for thanks. He does not explain his kindness. He just continues being kind day after day, without commentary. Gulliver cannot receive it. He tries. He thanks Don Pedro when Don Pedro comes to speak with him. He eats the food. He sleeps in the cabin. But every act of kindness from Don Pedro is also, by the logic of Houyhnhnm country, an act performed by Yahoo. And nothing in Gulliver's 3 years of rational education has given him a way to hold both facts at once. Swift's trap completes here. Gulliver has learned, in Houyhnhnm country, to despise Yahoo pride. He has become the most humble Yahoo on earth. He says so himself. And yet, he is so certain of his contempt for humanity that he cannot see Don Pedro's goodness. His certainty about human worthlessness is itself a form of pride. He has caught the disease he came to cure. Swift finds this not funny, exactly, sigh. The homecoming, December 5, 1715. His own street, his own door. Mary opens it. She steps forward. He steps back. She steps forward again. He allows it. He does not faint this time. He has prepared. He stands in the doorway of his own house and breathes through his mouth and allows his wife to embrace him. This is the bravest thing in the book. The year after, he manages dinner with the family, lavender in his nostrils, seat at the far end of the table. He manages a walk with Mary, keeping her slightly ahead of him, the Yahoo proximity managed at the length of a step. He manages conversations with neighbors. Brief, careful, controlled. He is managing. It is not the same as living, but it is what he has. The stable. Always, eventually the stable. He has added a third horse. He spends 3 to 4 hours there each morning. He speaks Houyhnhnm to them. They do not understand. They listen. He finds this sufficient. Their patience with his language is the closest available thing to the country he cannot return to. He has learned to live on the closest available thing. He writes. The travels take shape. He addresses them in his preface to his cousin Simpson, who he blames for the publication. He had not meant them to be read widely. He had meant them as a private account, for family. Now they will go out into the world. He expresses the hope that they will produce reform. He notes this hope without appearing to share it. His address to the reader. He is direct. He expects no gratitude. He does not expect to be thanked for telling the truth. He has seen enough of Yahoo behavior to know that gratitude for truth is rare. He hopes only that someone, somewhere, reads these pages and changes something about themselves. One person. He would settle for one person. He does not sound confident about one person. His final argument about pride. The Yahoo vice of vices. The thing that makes war possible, pride in one's nation. That makes injustice possible, pride in one's position. That makes cruelty possible, pride in one's certainty. That makes every wrong thing possible. The conviction that one is different enough from others that different rules apply. Gulliver identifies this carefully and completely. He does not notice that he is describing himself. The ending he cannot write, because the book has no redemption available for Gulliver, and Swift will not manufacture one. He cannot go back to Houyhnhnm country. He cannot become fully human again. He cannot join Mary at the breakfast table without lavender. He is, permanently and specifically, the man who crossed the world 4 times and came back from the 4th crossing, changed beyond changing back. Swift gives him horses. It is the most he can offer. Swift looking through Gulliver. In the final pages, the author's presence becomes unmistakable. The contempt and the compassion together, the rage and the grief at the same moment. Swift is not Gulliver. Swift sees what Gulliver cannot, but Swift also loves the things Gulliver loves. Clean reason, honest speech, a world organized by something better than appetite. The difference is that Swift knows these things are not coming. The 4 voyages as one journey, away from certainty, through comedy and horror and satire and cold philosophy, into the stable and the horses and the lavender at dinner. Swift does not say this is despair, he says this is clear sight. And clear sight, even when what it sees is difficult, is better than the alternative. He says this through Gulliver. Gulliver does not quite understand he is saying it, the reader's position at the end of the 4 voyages. We have laughed at Gulliver. We have been ahead of him. We have caught Swift's trap closing. We have, if we were paying attention, found ourselves in the Yahoo catalog. We are, all of us who have read this book, slightly less comfortable in our pride than we were before. That is what the book costs. Swift thinks it is worth it. The last question, is it better to know or to live comfortably without knowing? Swift never answers this directly. He shows us Gulliver knowing and the cost of it. He shows us the London street not knowing and the comfort of it. He leaves the choice where it belongs, with us. The book closes. The question stays open. Tonight you don't have to close it either. Swift's answer in the silence after the last page turns. It is not despair. He gave us Don Pedro. It is not hope. He gave us the stable. It is something between a clear look, sustained without flinching at what we are, and the steady choice, every morning, to go on anyway. That is the whole of it. The horses are patient. The book is done. Rest now. Now, the man behind the book. Because Gulliver's travels did not come from nowhere. It came from a specific life, a specific set of wounds, a specific intelligence that had spent 60 years watching the world fail to be better than it was. Jonathan Swift was born in Dublin in 1667. He had opinions about that from the beginning. Born in Dublin, November 30, 1667, 7 months after his father died. His mother left for England shortly after. He was raised by his uncle Godwin Swift, who paid for his education at Kilkenny College and then Trinity College, Dublin. Swift was grateful for this. He was also, throughout his life, unable to entirely forgive the circumstances that made gratitude necessary. His degree from Trinity was awarded speciale gratia, by special favor, meaning he had not quite met the formal requirements. Swift never fully explained this. Biographers have speculated too little study, too much argument, too much of whatever Swift was too much of. He left Trinity and Ireland together in 1688, when the Glorious Revolution made Dublin uncertain for everyone. Moor Park, Surrey. He became secretary to Sir William Temple, a retired diplomat of considerable distinction, a man who had been at the center of English political life for decades. Swift spent 10 years there. He read Temple's library. He watched Temple manage former power with dignity. He wrote. He learned the difference between being near importance and being important. The difference stayed with him. Esther Johnson. She was 8 years old when Swift arrived at Moor Park. The daughter of a servant, being educated in Temple's household, Swift became her tutor. When Temple died and Swift returned to Ireland, she followed him. She lived near him in Dublin for the rest of her life. Never far, never officially close. The exact nature of what they were to each other is the mystery Swift did not solve for us. The Journal to Stella, written between 1710 and 1713, 65 letters covering his London years at the center of power. They are the most personal thing Swift ever wrote. He invented a private language for them, little words between them. The shorthand of a long shared life. He tells her everything: the politics, the gossip, the meals, the headaches. He tells her everything except whatever the actual thing was. London, 1710. Swift arrives at the center. Queen Anne's reign. The Tories have just come to power. Harley, Bolingbroke. The ministry that ends the War of the Spanish Succession. Swift writes for them. The Examiner newspaper pamphlets. Political arguments. He is, for 3 years, at the precise intersection of literature and power. He is very good at it. He is very happy. It does not last. The Scriblerus Club, formed in 1714, Swift, Alexander Pope, John Gay, John Arbuthnot, Thomas Parnell. 5 of the sharpest minds in England meeting weekly to satirize everything wrong with the age of learning. They planned a collective work, the Memoirs of Martinus Scriblerus, a man who embodies every intellectual pretension. The project never quite finished. Gulliver's Travels is, in part, what it became, the Battle of the Books. Swift's first major satire, written 1697, published 1704. The ancient authors versus the modern authors, fought in the King's Library. Homer against the moderns. Virgil against Dryden. The ancients win, in Swift's telling, because they built on real foundations. The moderns spin webs from their own bodies, like spiders. The bees make honey from the world. Swift is a bee. He never lets you forget it. A Tale of a Tub, published the same year as the Battle of the Books, 1704. An attack on religious enthusiasm and corrupted scholarship in the form of a mad narrator whose digressions overwhelm his story. Queen Anne read it. She found it irreverent. She never gave Swift the English church appointment he wanted. The book that made his reputation cost him the position he sought. He found this instructive about institutions. His political journalism. The Examiner newspaper, Swift wrote it almost alone through the Tory ministry's critical years. Pamphlets defending the peace with France. The Conduct of the Allies. The most successful political pamphlet of the age, read by everyone. Turning opinion against the Whig war policy. Swift discovered that he could move public opinion. He also discovered that this ability does not protect you from the outcomes of the elections it influences. The Drapier's Letters, Ireland, 1724. A scheme, Wood's halfpence, to flood Ireland with debased copper coinage, profitable to the English contractor, ruinous to the Irish economy. Swift wrote 6 letters as a fictional Dublin draper, explaining in plain language why the scheme must be refused. Ireland refused. The scheme was cancelled. Swift became, overnight, the most beloved public figure in Ireland. He was surprised by this. He had not expected to be loved. A Modest Proposal, published 1729, the most devastating piece of satire in the English language. A calm, rational, economic proposal for solving Irish poverty by eating Irish babies. Every number is correct. The economic logic is impeccable. The tone is the tone of a reasonable man presenting a practical solution. Swift does not break the tone for a single sentence. He trusts the reader to break it for themselves. Most readers do. Some take a moment. The Irish question, and Swift's position in it. He was Anglo-Irish, born in Ireland, educated to English standards, loyal to the Church of England, contemptuous of English colonial policy toward Ireland. He was not Irish by the definition that would eventually matter. But he defended Ireland. He wrote for Ireland. He gave his money to Ireland. Ireland loved him for it. England was less sure what to do with him. His appointment as Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, Dublin, in 1713, the position that should have been a stepping stone, but became the destination. He had wanted a bishopric in England. He received a deanship in Ireland. The appointment was made by the Tory government as a reward. It was also, Swift felt clearly, an exile. He accepted it. He made it his life. He never stopped being bitter about the distinction. The Dublin years. He ran St. Patrick's with efficient care. He managed its finances. He administered its charitable obligations. He entertained. His table was known for good conversation and honest wine. He rode out into the countryside. He visited the sick. He wrote. He argued. He was, by every account that survives, a genuinely good dean who was also one of the most formidable minds in Europe, performing a role that required neither quality particularly. Esther van Homrij, Vanessa. She was 21 when she fell in love with Swift. He was 46. He wrote her Cadinus and Vanessa, a long poem in which the situation is fully described and nothing is resolved. She followed him to Ireland when he went. She lived there for years, waiting for him to decide what she was to him. He never decided. She died in 1723 of tuberculosis at 35. He kept the poem. The political world of 1710 to 1714, the 4 years when Swift was at the center. Robert Harley as Lord Treasurer, Henry St. John, Viscount Bolingbroke as Secretary of State. The Treaty of Utrecht ending the war with France. Swift negotiated access for the Tory ministry, wrote their arguments, shaped their public case. He was not a minister. He was something more useful, the man who knew how to say the thing. Queen Anne died on August 1, 1714. She had no surviving heirs. The Act of Settlement brought in George I from Hanover, Protestant German, speaking minimal English. The Tories collapsed overnight. Harley was imprisoned in the Tower. Bolingbroke fled to France. Swift's world, the world he had been at the center of for 4 years, ceased to exist on a Tuesday afternoon. He was in the wrong place before Wednesday. The Whigs returned. Swift was now the enemy. Not officially, not charged with anything, but pointedly not welcome in the rooms that mattered. He returned to Dublin. He had spent 4 years building something in London. He returned to Dublin and began again. He never stopped being angry about it. He channeled the anger into work. The work is why we still know his name. Writing Gulliver's Travels, 10 years in the making, though not continuously. First mention in a Scribblerus Club letter, 1714. Serious work through the early 1720s. The Drapier's letters interrupting in 1724. The final manuscript delivered to Benjamin Mott, his London publisher, in August 1726. Swift sent it anonymously, in sections with instructions for its publication. He told no one it was finished until it was already at the printer. The Scribblerus Club's influence on the book's structure. The original project imagined Scribblerus traveling to absurd places and encountering ridiculous learned systems. Gulliver's 4 voyages grew directly from this. Each voyage a different variety of human absurdity, each location a different satirical target. The club's collective wit is distributed throughout the book, though Swift's particular bitterness sharpens in the 4th voyage in ways that are entirely his own. The first edition appeared in October 1726, travels into several remote nations of the world, in 4 parts, by Lemuel Gulliver, first a surgeon, and then a captain of several ships. Benjamin Mott made some unauthorized changes to soften the political content. Swift was furious. A corrected edition appeared in 1735. It is a measure of Swift's reputation that a book he published anonymously was attributed to him within the week. Immediate sensation. Within weeks, Gulliver's Travels had been read throughout England and was circulating in France, in Holland, in Germany. Translations were underway before the year was out. Swift's cousin, Mrs. Howard, reported that it was read by everyone from cabinet ministers to kitchen maids. It was discussed in Parliament. It was read to children. The same book, the same pages. 2 completely different books at once. Pope's letter. Alexander Pope wrote to Swift within weeks of publication. The whole town is yours. He described the reception at every level of society. He said that the book had done something no pamphlet could. It had made people laugh at themselves, which is the only political argument that cannot be immediately refuted. Swift received this letter in Dublin and replied with characteristic modesty. He said he hoped it would do some good. He did not appear to believe it. The political targets identified, and they were identified immediately. Robert Walpole as Flimnap the Rope, dancing prime minister, the financial manipulator, the man who survived every scandal through agility rather than integrity. George I as the Lilliputian emperor, small in everything except self-importance. The Tory exiles Harley and Bolingbroke visible in the impeached ministers who flee to Blefuscu. Swift named nobody everyone knew. The Atterbury plot of 1722 behind the Lilliput section, and it requires a sentence of context. Francis Atterbury, Bishop of Rochester, was accused of Jacobite conspiracy to restore the Stuart line and sent into exile. His supporters, Tories mostly, were devastated. Swift's Lilliput encodes this: Gulliver refusing to destroy Blefuscu is the Tories refusing to completely destroy the opposition. The impeachment that follows is Atterbury's trial. The escape to Blefuscu is exile. What Brobdingnag actually is. Not a place but a standard. Swift had been reading political philosophy for decades. He knew what good governance looked like in theory. He knew that England was not it. Brobdingnag is a thought experiment. What would a genuinely wise ruler think of England? The king is the answer. The king's verdict is the point. Everything else in Brobdingnag is the setup. The South Sea bubble behind Laputa. 1720. The South Sea Company promised extraordinary returns on investment in trade with South America. Half of England invested. The company collapsed. The losses were catastrophic and widespread. Walpole managed the aftermath and emerged more powerful than before. Swift lost money. Several of his friends were ruined. The projectors of Legato are the directors of the South Sea Company, given laboratories instead of ledgers and allowed to continue. The Royal Society behind Legato, founded 1660, nullius in verba, take nobody's word for it, dedicated to experimental philosophy. Robert Hooke, Robert Boyle, Isaac Newton among its fellows. Swift was not against science. He was against the particular gap between the grandeur of scientific institutions and the poverty of their practical results for ordinary people. He was, in modern terms, against the capture of public confidence by the prestige of method rather than the evidence of outcome. The Houyhnhnms and deism, the rationalist religion of Swift's era. Deists argued that reason alone, without revelation, could arrive at moral truth. God was a divine watchmaker who set the universe going and left reason to manage it. Swift was an Anglican who found both enthusiasm and cold rationalism equally wrong. The Houyhnhnms are deism's logical conclusion, pure reason, perfectly consistent, and genuinely inhospitable to the human. Swift's complex faith. He was an ordained priest of the Church of England. He believed in the institution of the Church, its social function, its role in organizing a decent society, more than in its theology. He distrusted enthusiasm, the evangelical warmth, the personal revelation, the claim of direct access to God. He also distrusted cold rationalism. He believed the truth was somewhere between feeling and pure reason, and that institutions, if managed well, could hold the space. The question of misanthropy, asked of Swift in his own time and every generation since. Did he hate humanity? The book seems to say yes. He said no. In a letter to Pope 1725, the year before Gulliver was published, he addressed it directly. He wrote that he had long since finished with the world. He wrote that he had given up on systems. He wrote that he hated the animal called man. He then added the second sentence, which changes everything. I have ever hated all nations, professions, and communities, and all my love is toward individuals. He wrote this to Pope in 1725. Then, I hate and detest that animal called man, although I heartily love John, Peter, Thomas, and so forth. The distinction is the whole of it. He hates mankind as a category. He loves people as individuals. The category is an abstraction. The individual is real. I heartily love John, Peter, Thomas, and so forth. The crucial second half of that letter. Don Pedro de Mendez is John, Peter, Thomas. The Dublin poor Swift fed are John, Peter, Thomas. The friends he kept for 40 years are John, Peter, Thomas. The misanthrope gave away a third of his income, built a hospital, and maintained friendships of extraordinary fidelity. The category and the individual are different problems. He solved the individual one consistently. Swift's charity, documented, systematic, sustained. 1/3 of his income every year to Dublin's poor. He kept accounts. The money went to specific people in specific need, not to institutions, not to abstractions, but to the individuals he loved while professing to hate their species. His housekeeper kept records. The records survive. The records are very consistent. St. Patrick's Hospital for the Insane. Swift founded it with money from Gulliver's travels and his personal savings. It opened in 1757, 12 years after his death. He had arranged the funding and the charter in his will. His poem about it. He gave the little wealth he had to build a house for fools and mad. The building stood for 200 years. It treated the Dublin mentally ill as patients rather than prisoners, which was, in 1757, a significant distinction. Verses on the death of Dr. Swift, written 1731, published 1739. Swift writes his own obituary in verse form, imagining the reactions of friends and enemies to his death. The friends regret him for a moment, then find reasons to move on. The enemies are relieved. The public forgets. Only strangers, he imagines, will read him carefully after he is gone. He writes this with complete accuracy and considerable dark amusement. The illness. Swift suffered throughout his adult life from what he called his giddiness, episodes of vertigo, nausea, deafness, loss of balance. Modern medicine identifies this almost certainly as Méniere's disease, a disorder of the inner ear. It progressed across his life. The attacks came more frequently. The periods of clarity between them shortened. He described it in letters with the clinical detachment of a man accustomed to observing symptoms. His mental decline in the 1740s. The giddiness became constant. His memory failed. The capacity for sustained thought, the thing that had defined him, narrowed. By 1742, he was declared of unsound mind by a committee and 3 guardians were appointed to manage his affairs. He was 74. He lived for 3 more years in the deanery, cared for by his household, no longer writing, no longer the man who had written his own prophecy, made decades before its fulfillment. Watching a tree die from the top, struck by lightning, the crown dead, the lower branches holding on, he said, I shall be like that tree. I shall die at the top first. He said this as a young man, in full health, with the detached accuracy of someone who had already studied himself long enough to know what the pattern would be. He was right, he usually was. Death, October 19, 1745, he was 77. He died in the deanery, in the house he had occupied for 32 years. He was buried in St. Patrick's Cathedral, beneath the floor of the nave, beside Stella Esther Johnson, who had been buried there 17 years before. He had arranged this himself. He had arranged most things himself. his epitaph, written by himself in Latin years before his death. He composed it with the care he brought to everything. He specified the stone, the size, the text. In Latin, hic depositum est corpus Jonathani Swift. Here is deposited the body of Jonathan Swift. Ubi seva indignatio ulterius cor lacerare nequit. Where savage indignation can no longer lacerate his heart. He found the English language insufficient for the gravity of the occasion. He used his second, best language for the purpose. Yeats translated the epitaph. W.B. Yeats, born 130 years after Swift, the other great Irish writer of the next 2 centuries, wrote the translation Swift had not written. Swift has sailed into his rest. Savage indignation theirs cannot lacerate his breast. Yeats also wrote that Swift haunted him. He said that Swift's epitaph was the greatest in history. He said this with the authority of a man who knew what he was comparing it to. The man behind the work, not a misanthrope, but a wounded idealist. He believed things should be better than they were. He believed this so strongly and watched so carefully as they failed to improve, that the gap between the belief and the evidence became the engine of everything he wrote. Savage indignation. The savageness was the indignation of a man who had not given up caring. Giving up would have been quieter. The 1726 publishing context, because it helps to know what else was happening. Robinson Crusoe had appeared in 1719. Defoe's optimistic Protestant survivor, making order from chaos on his island. The novel as a form was 7 years old and still uncertain about itself. Fielding's Tom Jones was still 15 years away. Gulliver's Travels arrived between the novel's birth and its settling, and borrowed the travel narrative form in order to subvert it completely. Gulliver's place in literary history, the thing that doesn't fit any category cleanly. It is a novel before the novel existed. It is a political pamphlet that outlasted its politics. It is a children's book that is most coherent as adult despair. It is a travel narrative that travels nowhere real. It is satire that keeps outlasting its targets. Swift made a form for his argument because no existing form was adequate to it, the form of the travel narrative, and how Swift subverts it at every turn. Travel narratives of the 1720s promise the reader real places, accurate observations, useful knowledge. Gulliver provides impossible places, accurate observations of real things, and knowledge that is not useful but is true. He keeps the form's tone of reliable reportage. He uses it to report things that reliable reporters could not see. Defoe's Robinson Crusoe 5 years before Gulliver. The optimistic Protestant survivor versus Swift's bitter exile. Crusoe makes order from chaos. He builds, he plants, he converts, he rescues, he returns home successful. He is the story of what human capability and divine providence can produce together. Gulliver makes order, and then the order shows him what he is. He does not return home successfully. Swift read Robinson Crusoe. He appears to have found it unconvincing. What makes this book still alive? Every age finds its own flimnap, its own grand academy, its own rope, dance competition for public office. Every age finds its version of the king's question, is this actually civilized? Every age has its Struldbrugs. The immortality debate now conducted in laboratories rather than imagined on a page. And every age has Don Pedro, quietly providing the answer, without knowing it is the answer, on a ship somewhere in the ordinary sea. The book went out into the world. And immediately, the world did something Swift had anticipated. It took the parts it wanted and left the rest. The first generation of readers kept Lilliput and Brobdingnag. They made those parts into children's stories. They kept the wonder and set aside the anger. Swift had predicted this in his verses on his death. He was right, as usual, how the satire was stripped, not by malice but by necessity. Children cannot receive the fourth voyage. Adults who want entertainment rather than argument can set it aside. The publishing industry found that parts 1 and 2 sold reliably as adventure stories. Parts 3 and 4 sold less well on their own. The market spoke. The books split in two, along the line of what was comfortable. The adult book underneath. Parts 3 and 4. Laputa, Legato, the Houyhnhnms, are rarely included in illustrated editions for children. They are the parts that Swift considered most important. The book that most people know is not the book Swift wrote. The book Swift wrote is harder, colder, and considerably more honest about what it expects from the reader. Voltaire reading Swift, and the response. Candide, published 1759, 33 years after Gulliver. Voltaire had read Swift carefully. Candide's episodic structure, its philosophical targets, its refusal to provide a consoling ending, all of it in conversation with the travels. Where Swift ends in the stable with horses, Voltaire ends in the garden with vegetables. Different answers, same diagnosis. Samuel Johnson's response. Admiring and uncomfortable in equal measure. Johnson acknowledged the invention, the range, the prose. He was less comfortable with the fourth voyage. He thought Swift had gone too far. He thought the Yahoos were excessive. Johnson believed in human dignity as a given. Swift believed it had to be earned. Neither man was wrong, exactly. They were asking different questions. 18th century political readings. Each regime finding its Flimnap. After Walpole, the next Flimnap. After George I, the next small emperor. The book became a template for identifying the current political absurdity, applicable to every generation, because the structures it describes do not change, only the names. This is the property of great satire. It does not date, because it does not describe events. It describes patterns. The romantic misreading. Byron and Shelley finding in Swift a rebel against all institutions, a pure individual voice against the machinery of power. They were not wrong about the rage. They were less interested in the Anglican dean, the careful institutional manager, the man who gave a third to the poor and ran St. Patrick's efficiently for 30 years. The rebel they admired was real. He was not the whole Swift. Victorian reception, the century that cleaned Swift up. Bowdlerized editions, illustrated versions for children. The fourth voyage quietly dropped or softened. The Victorians found Swift useful as children's author and uncomfortable as moral philosopher. They kept the Lilliput adventure and rearranged the rest. The century that produced the most elaborate theories of human progress was, understandably, not fond of the Yahoo hypothesis. George Orwell's Dead Animal Farm, 1945, Talking Animals, Political Allegory, The Satire of Revolutionary Betrayal, 1984, 1949. The Thought Police, The Language of Power Used to Prevent Thought, The Impossibility of Genuine Opposition. Both books are in direct conversation with Swift. Orwell acknowledged this. He also wrote the most important critical essay on Swift, wrestling with a man he found himself half agreeing with and half resisting throughout. Orwell's essay, Politics vs. Literature, written 1946, still the most honest engagement with Swift. Orwell finds Swift's political vision reactionary, his psychology troubled, his view of human nature too dark. He also finds the prose perfect, the satire devastating, and the fourth voyage the most disturbing thing in English literature. He says he disagrees with Swift about almost everything and finds him more useful than almost anyone he agrees with. The 20th century's darker reading. After the First World War, The Yahoo hypothesis looked different. The trenches had produced evidence. The gas attacks had provided data. The institutional optimism of the Victorian age had been tested and found insufficient. Swift's cold assessment of human nature, which had seemed excessive in 1850, looked proportionate in 1920. The book had not changed, the context had. After Auschwitz, what does the Yahoo chapter mean now? The question was asked, and not easily answered. Swift's Yahoos are humanoid, violent, organized in their cruelty, capable of systematic destruction. The 20th century had demonstrated that this was not fantasy. The academic debates about Swift's misanthropy became harder to have against the historical evidence that had accumulated. Some arguments survive their refutation, some do not. The colonial reading, developed from the 1970s onward. Swift as Irish. The Yahoos as Ireland's colonized people, reduced to their Yahoo status by English colonial policy. Balnabarby as Ireland under Lilliputan economic theory imposed from above. The Drapier's letters as the political practice that matches the Travels' political theory. Swift as post-colonial writer event la letter. Before there was a name for the category. Post-colonial theory and Gulliver. New uses for the same bitter mirror. Every colonized culture that read Swift found something useful in the book's structure. The small people managed by an indifferent giant. The grand theories imposed from above on a countryside below. The systematic gap between the governor's self-image and the governant's experience. The book traveled to places Swift never imagined. It kept arriving usefully. Film and television, the adaptations, and what they always have to soften. Every screen version of Gulliver's Travels keeps Lilliput, most keep some of Brobdingnag. Almost none keeps the Houyhnhnms intact. The fourth voyage requires the audience to sit with a conclusion that has no comfort in it. Screens prefer conclusions with comfort. Swift's book does not provide one. This is a fundamental incompatibility. The Jack Black version, 2010, is instructive in what it reveals about the gap between Swift's book and its popular image. Gulliver becomes a mailroom clerk who finds his confidence among the Lilliputians. The satire becomes a story about self-belief. The Yahoo chapter is not present. Swift's argument about human nature is replaced with an argument about human potential. It is a completely different book. It made $237 million at the box office. Swift would have found this perfectly consistent with his thesis. The word Lilliputian, now in every dictionary. Small-minded, petty, concerned with trivial distinctions at the expense of important ones. Swift coined it in fiction. It entered the language within a generation. When we call something Lilliputian today, we are using Swift's vocabulary to describe Swift's target, the political obsession with minor distinctions that has major consequences. The word outlasted its specific political context by 3 centuries. Wahoo, the word Swift gave us for ungoverned human appetite. Also now the name of a technology company, founded 1995. The founders were graduate students at Stanford. They named their directory service after Swift's creatures, intending the self-deprecating humor of academics acknowledging their own appetite for information. Swift's Yahoos hoarded shiny stones. The technology Yahoo indexed shiny information. The founders had read the book. Swift would have had thoughts about this. The Struldbrug problem today. No longer fantasy. Modern longevity research asks exactly Swift's question, how long do you want to live? The scientists working on extending the human lifespan are, in Swift's taxonomy, projectors. Their cucumber sunbeams are telomere extension and senolytics and caloric restriction. Their Grand Academy is well funded. Their Struldbrug problem. What happens to a mind and a person across 200 years remains as unresolved as it was in 1726. Would you want to live forever? The question is now scientific. Clinical trials, research papers, real funding, real results on model organisms. Gulliver had a beautiful plan for immortal life. Swift demolished it with the Struldbrugs. The scientists have not yet produced a Struldbrug, but they have not yet produced a counter argument to Swift's point about what unlimited time does to a mind that was shaped for limited time. Laputa and social media, the distracted citizens who need to be tapped to pay attention. The flappers with their bladders, the notification. The Laputans who cannot focus without external stimulus, the user. The music that never stops, the feed. Swift imagined a society organized around continuous abstract stimulation, governing badly while its citizens were absorbed in their own internal calculations. He imagined this in 1726. He did not need a smartphone to see the pattern. The Grand Academy and modern think tanks. The gap between theory and result. The projectors of Legato are confident, funded, industrious, and producing nothing that the countryside needs. Every era has its equivalent. The theories change. The confidence does not. The countryside outside the Academy's windows continues to suffer from the Academy's solutions. Swift identified this as a permanent institutional dynamic. It has remained permanent. The homonyms and artificial intelligence. The question the 21st century is asking in different vocabulary. What would a purely rational intelligence think of us? The homonyms' response to human civilization. The careful disgust, the logical case for our removal, is the scenario that AI safety researchers call the alignment problem. Swift dramatized it with horses in 1726. The engineers are working on it with mathematics in the present. Both are trying to answer the same question. Swift's central question as a technology, age question, can reason without feeling govern? The homonyms have reason without feeling. Their governance is perfect, and their community is rational, and there is no place in it for Gulliver. The AI systems being built have reason without feeling. In the current state of things. Swift's answer, a society of pure reason, is not a society for human beings. The question of what to do about this remains open. The Lilliputian political parties and modern polarization. The heel-height split that has not ended. High heels versus low heels. The distinction as a party platform. The mutual contempt of people who disagree about something they could examine closely and find almost identical. Swift's satirical distance from both parties. He found them both ridiculous. Is a position that every era's partisans find infuriating. That is the correct response to his satire. The big Indian War and contemporary religious conflict. The egg that is still the same egg. Swift wrote his theological satire about a real dispute. The English Reformation, the Act of Uniformity, the religious wars of the 16th and 17th centuries. He reduced it to an egg. 300 years later, the egg is different, but the argument is identical. The absolute conviction that one's own reading is correct and that the difference justifies the cost of the war. The Lilliputian navy is still in the channel. Brobdingnag's king and the philosopher leader, still an ideal, still unrealized. Every age imagines the philosopher king, the leader who reads, thinks, asks good questions, and tells the truth. Every age finds that the mechanisms for selecting leaders select for different qualities. The king of Brobdingnag is possible. Swift was careful to make him possible. He is simply not what the available processes produce. This has not changed. Don Pedro de Mendez, the most underrated character in English literature. He is on a ship. He finds someone in distress. he helps. He asks nothing. He continues helping even when his help is rejected. He does not have a theory about why he helps. He just helps. He appears in the book for about 12 pages. He is the answer to the question the book spends 350 pages asking. What Don Pedro represents. Goodness without ideology. He is not good because he has a theory of goodness. He is not good because he expects a reward. He is not good because he has been trained to be. He is good in the way that some people simply are, practically, daily, without commentary. Swift, who spent his career attacking every institution humanity has built, put one character in the book who works. Don Pedro works. Swift's real argument, hidden in plain sight. We are not Houyhnhnms, but we can be Don Pedro. Not perfectly rational. Not without appetite. Not without error. But decent on the days when we choose to be. Kind to the specific person in front of us. Useful when we could be otherwise. The bar is lower than the Houyhnhnm standard. It is also achievable. Don Pedro achieves it on a ship in the last 20 pages of the book. The book's lasting cruelty. It will not tell us what to do. It shows us what we are. It shows us what we could be. It shows us Don Pedro. Then it ends. No instruction follows. No reform program is attached. Swift gives us the diagnosis and the faintest possible indication of the cure and leaves us to work out the rest. He seems to have felt this was more honest than the alternative. It's lasting mercy. It takes us seriously enough to be honest with us. Swift did not write a comforting book because he did not think comfort was what the reader needed. He thought the reader needed truth, even when truth is uncomfortable, because comfortable lies produce Flimnap and the Grand Academy and the Blefuscu War. He trusted the reader with the whole argument. That trust is the mercy underneath the savageness, the children's classic and the adult nightmare, occupying the same pages always. Lilliput delights. The Houyhnhnms disturb. Both of these are in the book. The book that reads one way at 9 and another way at 40. The adventure that becomes the argument. The same pages doing entirely different work, depending on what the reader brings to them. Swift built this in. It is the deepest formal achievement of the travels. Swift as the ancestor of modern satire. The Daily Show, The Onion, Private Eye. Armando Iannucci's political comedies. All working in the tradition Swift established. The mode is identical. Adopt the enemy's tone. Use it to expose the enemy's argument. Trust the audience to catch the switch. Swift was the first to do this at full length, in prose, with complete technical control. His errors are numerous. None has quite matched the fourth voyage. The satirist's dilemma: does mockery change anything? Swift's lifetime answer: probably not, but still. He spent 50 years making arguments that the people in power ignored. He watched Walpole continue. He watched the Grand Academy continue. He watched the Blefuscu War continue under different names. He kept writing. He seems to have concluded that the writing was its own justification, that seeing clearly was worth doing whether or not it changed the thing being seen. His influence on Pope, Gay Fielding, everyone who came after with a pen and a grievance. Pope's Dunsad, the satirical epic of literary and cultural decline, owes its method to Swift. Gay's Beggar's Opera, the criminal underworld as political allegory, owes its courage to Swift. Fielding's Tom Jones, the narrator who addresses the reader directly about the gap between appearance and reality, owes its tone to Swift. He established that literature could be honest about power. The ones who came after used the permission. The Dean of St. Patrick's, riding out to distribute bread in Dublin. The satirist's actual life, alongside the satirist's work. The man who wrote the most savage diagnosis of human failure distributed bread to its victims every week for 30 years. The cruelty in the work and the kindness in the practice are not contradictions. They are the same thing expressed in different registers. He was as serious about the bread as about the travels. Both were arguments. What Gulliver gave us, a vocabulary for absurdity, Lilliputian, Yahoo, the rope dance for political office, the egg theology, the sunbeams from cucumbers, the Struldbrug problem. These are not just literary references. They are thinking tools, ways of naming patterns that would otherwise require lengthy description. Swift gave the language 6 precise instruments for identifying specific kinds of human failure. We have been using them ever since. The final image that stays: Gulliver in his stable, talking to horses. The sanest madman in literature, the most rational Yahoo in England. The man who has seen everything and found his peace in a place that requires nothing of him except presence. Swift makes this the ending not because it is a solution, but because it is honest. There is no solution. There is only the specific peace you can find in the specific circumstances available to you. Swift's epitaph again, because it is the only ending the book earns. Hic depositum est corpus. Here is deposited the body, ubi seva indignatio, where savage indignation, ulterius cor lacerare nequit, can no longer lacerate his heart. He wrote it for himself. It fits the book as well. Savage indignation, all 4 voyages of it released at last. The horses patient, the heart quiet, sleep well. Come back to Gulliver, before all 4 voyages. Before the storm that wrecked the antelope, before the tiny ropes on his wrists. He was a young man in London once, studying anatomy, learning his craft, planning a practical life. He wanted to see the world and come home again. Both halves of that plan seemed equally achievable. What he wanted: 3 things, really: to see the world, to be useful, to come home. Simple enough, reasonable enough, the kind of plan that sensible people make. He saw the world. He was useful in his way. He came home. The 3rd item on the list was technically accomplished. The spirit of it. That is where things got complicated. What he found: the world is vaster than the plan accounts for, stranger, more troubling. It has places where you are the giant and places where you are the insect and places where your kind is the question being voted on. None of the maps prepared him. You cannot be prepared for Brobdingnag. You can only go through it. The cost, and it is worth naming plainly. He cannot come home, not fully. He can stand in the kitchen and eat dinner, and he does. He can walk to the stable and talk to the horses, and he does. But the man who left on the antelope in 1699 does not exist at the end of the book. That man was simpler. Simpler is not always better, but it is sometimes easier to live with. What the book gives us: permission, mostly. Permission to find things absurd without being consumed by them. Permission to see clearly without being required to fix everything at once. Permission to rest tonight, even though the rope dancers are still on their ropes and the Grand Academy is still in session. The book does not require you to act, it only asks you to see. The Lilliput inside every office, the politics of small spaces, the factions, the rope dance for the corner desk, the heel-height alliances. It is not cynicism to notice this. It is clarity. Swift noticed it. He also went to dinner with the people inside it, and distributed bread to the ones outside it, and kept writing. The noticing and the continuing are not opposites. The Brobdingnag inside every mirror, the gap between how we present ourselves and what we actually are at close range. Swift found this funny. He also found it human. The Brobdingnagian ladies with their enormous pores were not contemptible to him. They were just real, in a way that the careful social surface does not allow for. The close-up is honest. Honesty is not the same as cruelty. The Laputa inside every plan. The beautiful theory that forgets the ground beneath it. We all have them. The projector in us who builds from the roof down, who extracts sunbeams from the cucumber of our ambitions. Swift laughs at this. He also, and this matters, does not say stop planning. He says look at the ground. Check if the wheat is growing. Ask Lord Munodi how the mill works. The Howiddom country, inside every moment of wanting to be better. We have all been there. The place where things are clean and ordered and reason governs, and the day is not full of the particular friction of human want. It is not a place we can live, but it is a place we can visit, inside ourselves, when the noise of the Yahoo world gets too loud. Gulliver found it. He could not stay. The visit is still worth the journey. Swift's gift, not answers, but the right questions, asked with enough precision to sting. Why does this person get to be in charge? What is this war actually about? Who benefits from this theory? What is this institution actually producing? These are not new questions. Swift asked them in 1726, and every generation asks them again. The questions stay fresh because the situations that require them do not change. Gulliver writing at his desk, this is where we leave him. The candle burning, the page filling, the stable 15 steps away through the garden, the city outside, the horses waiting, the manuscript taking its final shape under his careful hand. He is writing for us. He does not know we are here. The book crosses the distance. He hopes we will read it and change. He knows we probably will not. Not because we are bad, but because change is hard, and the Yahoo behaviors are old, and the rope dance for political office has been running longer than any of us have been watching. He wrote it anyway. The writing is separate from the outcome. He decided that early and kept to it. The horse is in the stable, patient, warm, asking nothing. This is what Gulliver found at the end of 4 voyages, and this is what he comes back to every morning. Not wisdom, not resolution, not the Howiddom country, just the horses, their breath, their warmth, their willingness to stand still while he talks. Sometimes the best available thing is the best available thing. The night outside Gulliver's window, London going about its Yahoo business. The coffee houses still open, the pamphlets still circulating. Flimnap somewhere on his rope, the academy submitting its funding proposals. The big Endians and little Endians maintaining their positions. All of it continuing. The night contains all of it. The night also contains the stable. Both are real. Mary somewhere in the house. Still patient. Still there. Not in the stable is his. But in the house, which is hers and his both. Making the tea he does not always come in to drink. Setting the table he does not always sit at fully. Keeping the life that he cannot quite inhabit and cannot quite leave. Mary is the book's quiet answer to its own loudest questions. The quiet argument for ordinary goodness, not reason, not wisdom, not the Howiddom ideal, just Mary still at the door and Don Pedro still offering the food and the horses still standing in the straw. Ordinary. Available. Sufficient. Swift hid his most hopeful argument in the 3 most ordinary characters in the book. He trusted us to find it. This is the mercy underneath the savage indignation. What lasts from this book? Not the specific political targets. Walpole is gone, the South Sea Company is gone, Queen Anne is gone. What lasts? The shapes. The rope dance for political office. The war over which end of the egg. The beautiful theory that ignores the ground. the immortality that becomes a curse, the rational society that has no room for human beings. The shapes are permanent. The names change. The shapes, pettiness, scale, folly, longing, the cost of seeing too clearly. Pettiness, the Lilliputian court. Scale, Brobdingnag, showing us ourselves. Folly, legato, pursuing its theories. Longing, Gulliver at the Houyhnhnm shore. The cost of seeing too clearly, the stable, the lavender, the 15 steps. Swift gave us 5 shapes for 5 things that do not go away. We carry them with us now. We will recognize them when we meet them. A night like this one, quiet, late, the day's arguments set down for the moment, the world outside continuing without requiring your attention until tomorrow. Swift wrote his book for nights like this, not for the lecture hall, not for the debate, but for the hour when the noise has thinned and the page can be heard. This is that hour. You found it. What Swift might say to us tonight, we can only guess. Probably something accurate and uncomfortable. Something about whichever current rope dancer is currently on the rope. Something about the latest Grand Academy project and its relationship to the countryside. He would not be gentle about it. He was rarely gentle, but then he would probably offer you something to eat. He usually did. But also, he gave 1/3 of everything to the poor and built a hospital and kept writing. This is the thing to hold on to at the end of the 4 voyages and the biography and the legacy. The savageness was real. The indignation was real. And underneath both of them, the daily practice of someone who had decided that caring was the only honest response to seeing clearly. The satirist who cared. Caring is the only reason to bother being angry. If it didn't matter, the anger would have nowhere to go. Swift was angry because he thought things should be better. He thought things should be better because he cared about the people inside the things. The book is the anger made legible. The bread is the care made practical. Both were necessary. Both were him. Gulliver setting down his pen. The account is complete. The warning is issued. He has told the truth as he understands it, which is to say, accurately and incompletely, because no one tells the truth completely, and Gulliver least of all. But he has done what he could. The pen goes down. The candle is low. The night is quiet. Tomorrow the stable. The stables. He will sleep there again tonight. Or near enough. The horses settle around him. He has learned their rhythms. The first one shifts and sighs at a particular hour. The second sleeps most deeply just before dawn. He knows them as well as he knows himself. Better, perhaps. They do not change depending on what world they have most recently visited. The candle going out. The study goes dark. The pen is still. The manuscript waits on the desk. Pages that will go out into the world tomorrow, or next week, or in 300 years when someone picks up the book at night and finds that it is still talking. The candle was always going to go out. The book does not go out with it. We close the book, or we let it close around us as we drift. Either way is fine. Either way is what the book was built for. Swift did not write this for the lecture hall. He wrote it for the hour when you are tired enough to let a story in all the way. The hour when the defenses are down and the thing can be received as it is. The 4 journeys behind us. Lilliput, where we were giants among the petty. Brobdingnag, where we were small among the serious. Laputa, where we were grounded among the distracted. Houyhnhnm country, where we were human among the purely rational. We have been all 4. We come back to London. The night is good. Rest now. The world is still there. Flimnap is still on his rope. The academy is still in session. The big Endians hold their ground. The little Endians hold theirs. The The struldbrugs wait. Laputa casts its shadow. All of it's still there. It will be there in the morning. Tonight is not for any of it. Tonight is just this. But tonight is not for fixing it. Swift did not fix it either, and he tried for 50 years. The book is not a fix. It is a lamp, a very bright, somewhat uncomfortable lamp. And tonight the lamp has been lit. That is sufficient. The rest can wait until the morning, when you are rested enough to carry it again. Tonight is for rest, for the particular gift of letting the day be over. Its arguments, its rope dances, its theories of sunbeam extraction, all of it set down. The Houyhnhnm country had this, the quality of a day that ended cleanly and was not carried into the next one. You don't need a floating island or a rational horse to find the version available to you. You are already in it. Gulliver in his straw. Whatever peace he found, and he found a particular kind, which is not the same as happiness but is the kind that holds. He found it here, in the straw, with the horses, in the 15 steps between the house and the stable. We have a version of this. We are probably already in it, the horses breathing, the oldest comfort, warm, slow, uncomplicated. Horses have been breathing beside people for longer than writing has existed. The sound is older than Swift, older than London, older than the rope, dance in the academy and the articles of impeachment. The sound does not ask anything of you. It only continues. Let it continue. The night settling, the city quieting, the book quieting with it, the arguments done for now, the satire resting, the 4 voyages over, the candle out in Gulliver's study, Mary's lamp out in the kitchen, the stable light the last to go, then that too, the city in its dark, the river still, the horses breathing in the warm straw. The book will still be here tomorrow, so will we. Sleep well. Moonlight through stable boards, the horses still, Gulliver at rest, the 4 voyages behind him, the city beyond the wall, the morning somewhere ahead, all of it patient, all of it waiting, all of it, for now, entirely still.